All right, everybody. This is Liz LePage for On One Software. Today we have an amazing webinar that we're really excited about with a Seattle-based photographer, Jacob Lucas, and he's here to talk to you a little bit about his post-processing workflow. And you can take a look at his website. It's jflphotography.com. He's got some amazing stuff on there. You can also keep up with him on his blog, or you can follow him on Google Plus, or both places where you can watch some of the photography that he sends out into the world. So we get to learn a little bit about his workflow today. And without further ado, I'm actually going to transfer it over to him so you can see his screen, and he'll be able to walk you through all of the different things that he does when he processes his images. So let's go ahead and make Jacob our presenter. And there we go.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Good.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Liz, and thanks to On1 for having me. Let me just click play on this little presentation here. So this is, yeah, thanks for everyone for coming. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone joining from wherever they may be. As Liz said, my name is Jacob Lucas. I'm a photographer up here in Seattle, Washington. I'm originally from Australia, and I've been shooting kind of all over the world for the last few years. And in that time, I've really come to love the software that On1 releases. And I'm really excited today to talk to you guys about how I use the new version of the Perfect Photo Suite, version 8. So what I'm going to do before I get started is just go through some examples of my images and show you guys sort of before and after views of just so you get a feel for what I think is possible. And this is just sort of cutting the iceberg. So this is a shot I took in San Francisco just a few weeks ago, actually. This is straight out of the camera. I haven't done anything to it. There's probably dust spots all over this, and there's artifacts from animals, shall we say, here on this pillar on the right. And this version is actually something that I edited in the suite. So everything I did to this image was done entirely in the Perfect Photo Suite. I was able to clean up any distractions here on the railing, bring out some color using new adjustment brushes that are new in Perfect Photo Suite 8, you know, and enhance some of the colors and things like that. This next shot was also taken quite recently in the Columbia River Gorge. This is Punch Bowl Falls. This again is straight out of the camera. I'd set up somewhere in this little river coming down here. My feet were quite cold. But yeah, you can see that there's beautiful green trees and moss on these rocks, some sunlight coming in through the valley there. And using entirely Perfect Photo Suite 8, we're really able to bring out those colors and give it a really beautiful, warm, autumny feel. I was really excited to edit this because when I saw this picture in my camera screen, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to become pretty cool if I can make this a whole lot warmer. And so adjusting all the lighting in the background there, really bringing out those colors was something I was really happy to do in this new version of the product. This is a shot from Trillium Lake. There's an Oregon-ish feel to this presentation so far. It'll go more widespread. But yeah, again, this is straight out of the camera and entirely in Photo Suite. The colors come back out. I'm able to really shine some light on the man who's setting up his fishing rod there on the dock, just to really attract the attention to him in this beautiful setting here. This was an amazing day. This was shot in Nashville, Tennessee. At Robert's Western World was the name of this little honky-tonk place. This was a lot of fun, and I was right in the middle of the crowd for this, but it was very dark, so I had to set up with a very fast lens and high ISO on my camera, so there's a lot of perhaps noise coming out of this. You can see on the guy's hat here, it's somewhat pixelated, but what I really wanted to do was give this sort of a Western feel, and so this image, as a result, again, entirely within the suite, was something that I was able to pull out. This is from Iceland, in a place called, and if there's anyone from Iceland, I apologize for the pronunciation, Hvalfjörður, I think is how you say it, which is just north of Reykjavik. amazing, amazing landscape here. But this is someone's house in front of this lonely tree, and there's a real feeling of separation here, and a very, very green, lush feel. And I wanted to bring that out again entirely within the suite. This is in Hawaii, and really, really adding the warm pink hues to this image. And again, removing some of these distractions. You see these ships here disappear. This was done with the new adjustment brushes entirely within the suite. Previously, I'm an aperture user, so any sort of spot healing or cloning out I had to do inside of aperture. So this new version, which introduces Perfect Eraser and some of the other cloning tools, really lets me do all of my editing within the one application, which makes it far more streamlined. And my hometown of Seattle, this one I really liked. I shot this with my dad. I was showing him around Seattle, and I got to really make this sort of the rainy city feel entirely within the suite. Was able to add this texture, really, really make it this stormy gray day feel. I figure why not perpetuate the stereotype and make it a beautiful scene. So right now I'm going to cut to actually editing an image. This is a picture of Vista House on the right. This is the final version, but I'm going to show you guys exactly how I got there. We're going to touch on a few different parts of the suite. We're going to go through perfect layers, how to use some of the new adjustment brushes, a little bit on masking, and then into perfect effects and presets. So I'm going to just jump out of this keynote right now and go into Aperture. For people out here who are mostly Lightroom users, I imagine that the interaction is somewhat the same. I'm not going to focus too much on Aperture in this presentation, but if someone wants to jump in and correct me for any Lightroom-ish eccentricities, that's fine. To Liz and Michael, who are here from On1, if there are any questions at any point while I'm speaking, feel free to jump in and throw those at me at the point. I'm happy to answer them at any time. So for now, I've got two pictures here. Let me just blow this up a little bit. So I took two pictures while I was at Vista House of this particular setup. I'd seen this location many times before, and I wanted to give sort of my take on it, to do something different. And one of the things I like to do when I get to a location is, when I'm setting up, just sort of don't set up and start shooting immediately. I find that really sort of takes into account all preconceived ideas of what I've heard and seen about the location. When I get there, I like to sort of just stand and watch what's going on and get a feel for the place, so it can sort of talk to me and so I can understand sort of what's going on at the location. So what I did notice was at this little ring road in front of Vista House, there were cars driving by all the time. So I set my camera up on my tripod and set the camera to be ready for a long exposure to catch car trails going around the bottom of the house to sort of frame it at the bottom nicely. If this were just sort of cropped like this, for example, or something like that, it wouldn't have the same celestial effect, if you like. It's definitely, I think, a far more welcomed addition to the picture, where you've got this wonderful little light trail framing the bottom of the house. However, because of this, you can see there's this lens flare from the car headlights coming through, and it's sort of ruining the sky. It can be kind of a pain to clean that out. So what I did was I reviewed the picture, and then I was able to take another one while there weren't any cars going by, so that I knew that I was able to use the photo suite to mask in a correct sky. But, you know, the car trails and the lights from the cars are all gone in this picture, so I definitely wanted to include those because I saw this in the back of my camera. I was really excited for it. So we're going to make that happen and put the two images together. So I'm just going to select them both and right-click and export them into Perfect Photo Suite. These images open up as two different windows, I guess. So to put them together, you can see here there's the first one, and here's the second one. To put them together, you need to just copy this layer and paste it over the top of the other one, and then you can close out that guy. So what we're looking at now is the perfect layers module, and I've got my two layers here. The bottom layer is the sky, and the top layer is the car trails, and I want to combine them both. Because these file names are kind of confusing, I always rename these to say to mirror exactly what they are, so that I know quickly by looking what I'm looking at. So I'm just going to say car trails on this guy, and you do this by double clicking, and this one is the sky. So I know pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. For people who are new to masking, it took me kind of a few seconds to wrap my head around it, but it can be a little confusing. So what we're seeing here is a top-down view of different images, if you like, put on top of each other. And I find it helpful to think of them as different sheets of paper, right? And when you mask out, what you're doing is effectively taking a pair of scissors to the piece of paper that is on the top, cutting out a section of that piece of paper so you can see through to what's underneath. So if you were to take something like this brush and mask out the car trails here, we're going to see them go away, so we can see through to the image that's underneath, but only in that section that we cut out. So I'm just going to undo that. What I want to do is mask out the sky in this picture so that only the car trails remain. There are two ways to do this. One is with this masking brush here on the left. You can select this with the B button or just by clicking on the little icon here. And you can, paint across like that, and you can see the sky go away. It's kind of annoying for a big area of an image. So what they have is a masking bug, and this is the same from Suite 7 to Suite 8. But the bug is a little different in Suite 8, so I do want to show you guys this. I find it a little easier to use. Before it was this square little bug with a couple of antennae, and you could adjust one to do feathering and one to do opacity. Those properties still exist up here in the opacity, but what they've done here is made it a lot easier to sort of move around with just this one little arm, and you can drag it. The feathering is just a selection slider, this slider here on the dotted line. That's the feathering, so it's a really hard edge here. Oh, as you drag this out, the mask slowly becomes more and more, I guess, a gradual application, and this controls the width of the mask. So I want roughly the sky from here. But you can see what this done is it's sort of darkened the top of the picture. So if you click to apply over here, you can see we've masked out the sort of the top 2/3 of the picture. Another way you can see this is by clicking down here in the bottom left and selecting mask red. And everything that's red is what's masked out of the picture. I want to bring back some of the building, so I'm going to get the brush here. And by using the perfect brush, which came out, I think it's Suite 7, I'm going to paint back in, and it's going to recognize edges and just bring back some of the lighting on that building that we didn't really want to mask out, so that it's a constant sort of light all over the building that was cast. So you can see that that's how that looks. And I always sort of toggle between a preview view, if you like, of the image versus what's actually masked out. So, oops. So anything that's red is masked out. I can see here that I missed that particular part of the image. I need to make my brush smaller to mask that out properly. I'll put that back in. Okay. So now that I've got the image kind of the way I'm ready for it, what I'm going to do now is create a stamped layer so that this stamped layer will be a flattened view of the two other layers in between it. And I work with this to do any adjusting to areas of distraction on the image, because at this point I'm looking at a flattened view of the picture. You can create this stamped layer by going up to Layer and selecting New Stamped Layer. So you can see here, I'm not sure if you guys can see on the webinar, there's a dust spot here in the picture, there's one here, and there's a couple of other distracting lights in this picture that I don't really want to show. So the perfect eraser is going to be my friend here for some of this stuff. This works exactly like the masking brush. I'm just going to click and watch these dust spots disappear. This is the equivalent of I think the healing brush in Lightroom and the repair tool in Aperture. So I get to sort of use this for free here and get rid of any distractions that are in this picture. The security light on the building, for example, isn't really that attractive to me. But it's amazing to me how much of a better job this does than the brushes in Aperture. It looks relatively seamless as though it wasn't even there to begin with. So it's a really great addition to the suite. For things like these lights, they look a little more complex. So I'm going to zoom in on this area and work at a closer view so that I can really see what I'm doing. I usually try and put things in the center of where I'm working, just so I get a feel for what's around it. I drag it and look at things like this. So this light here, I'm going to get rid of by using the eraser as well. And it's as simple as going like this. This tool is an iterative tool, so if it doesn't work completely right the first time, we get to keep going at it again until it actually looks right. So you click and drag, and then it goes away and does a far better job of looking at I'm just toggling between undo and redo here. It does a far better job of actually like simulating what the tree is, and you can just go over things like that. Anything that looks sort of out of order here, and at full view, it's going to look pretty much like the tree there, like there wasn't even a light there to begin with. If we wanted to get really creative, we can use the clone stamp here. Just going to make the size a little smaller and bring in some parts of this tree. The cool thing about the clone stamp, and this is something I haven't seen in any other product, is once you select where you want to clone from by clicking Option or Alt, you can see the cursor change as I'm toggling this key. I'm just pressing Alt and Option here. If I want to clone from here and place it somewhere else, it actually gives you a little preview of what you're about to clone so that you can line up whatever you're pasting. And so just something like that maybe makes it a little better, maybe it doesn't. And this is the fun of editing, right? Maybe sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, pasting in or cloning in some things like another branch out here, perhaps. Going with it until you see exactly where things work and where things don't. I think for this point, I'm going to leave this because when I edit this image completely, I'm going to darken these trees, and this sort of pattern here isn't going to become too obvious. I do want to get rid of, however, this light, and I will use the clone brush for this guy. I'll make it a little bigger, and we can adjust feathering on this, and this is sort of just like masking, where the feathering is like a gradual decline of the area of effect, if you like. So I want to clone from somewhere up here to be able to clone out this light and keep the edge on the building. So I'm just going to click up here, and you can see my edge here is just sort of floating around. And what I'm going to do is just drag it over here until it lines up with an area that I want to paste in or clone in. This looks pretty good right about there. I'm just going to go like this. This is something that used to take me a lot of time in Aperture, and this is a real big time saver here. This is like the light wasn't even there. That would take a lot of cloning and replacing in Aperture, and I'm sure in Lightroom too. So I really like these adjustment brushes. They're a big time saver. The eraser here I'm going to use to get rid of some of these green lights, which are a little distracting. Just by dragging over these areas, they disappear pretty quickly. With this, it may or may not work because of what's around here, but we can always give it a try and see what happens. If this doesn't erase it cleanly, we can always clone. That actually did a pretty good job, but I want to keep the edge of this window pane here, so I'm just going to clone that back in like that. There are some signs in the door and things like that which we can get rid of too. I always look pretty hard at anything in my pictures that could be considered distracting, and things like in that San Francisco picture with the animal things on the railing there. It's just removing any sort of distraction. So you can see what we've cleaned up by clicking Unpreview on, or the Make the Layer Invisible button here. So this is how it was, and then we get to get this real clean view of the picture without any real distractions. We've got the light trails at the bottom, and then a good clean building without any real distractions in the trees. So at this point, I'm pretty sure I'm ready to go into effects and start working on actually stylizing this picture. So just by clicking on effects here, this is exactly the same as it was in Suite 7. It comes into effects. You'll notice the speed at which it came in here. I don't have a terribly awesome computer right now. The speed of the suite, I've noticed from Suite 7, has increased quite a bit in terms of saving and even just like moving between modules, which I'm really happy to see. The files that I was working on have been, I usually shoot with a D800, and they're 36 megapixel files, and so it can take a fair bit of memory, and saving used to take a long time, but now it's actually really quick. So some things I want to do to this picture in terms of stylizing. I want to enhance some texture on the building and in the steps here, and I want to make the night sky kind of a little blue or maybe a little pink and darken these trees, so that the intention here is to really shine this celestial, almost otherworldly nighttime look on this building. I can do that in a few different ways, but I really want the viewer to be sucked in and looking at this building as though it's some like observatory looking to a foreign planet or something like that. It just looks kind of magical underneath these stars and amongst the trees. So let's start with bringing out some texture. The first thing I'm going to do is going into the Tone Enhancer section. Some of these you'll notice are quite familiar with, are quite similar to what was in Suite 7. Down at the bottom here is Tonal Contrast. This guy's been my friend for a long time. We go way back. So I'm just going to click and apply it. But it's applied it to the whole image. You can see it's like bringing out some noise in the sky, which I don't want. I only want to selectively apply this to the building. The building looks pretty awesome right now with all these. It really brings out the difference in. I'm just going to unselect it here. All the grooves and shadows and tones in the building is exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to use my masking brush for this, just like I did to the building in Perfect Effects. I'm going to click Invert first to remove the effect from everything, and then paint in exactly where I want the effect to be. Similarly, I want to use the Perfect brush so that it protects the edges of where I'm applying the effect. So I can just click on the image, and I'm just dragging here to start painting in the texture. You'll see as I get nearer to the edge that the sky doesn't get the effect applied to it. If I turn the brush off, you'll see as I drag here, you can see the sky getting lighter around the building, the noise is coming back, and that's, I'll show you with the mask to make that a little clearer. The edge was really respected here, but over here it's just ignored. So I'm going to undo that. But I definitely want this only applied to the building, so I'm going to reselect the brush and just apply this. I'm just dragging relatively nonchalantly here over the whole building, and some of the steps to bring out the texture here, just dragging and painting. It's as simple as that. One thing I always do, you can see over here, there's a preview of the mask that you've created. I want to make sure I covered the whole building. So the masking red, while it will show you what you've masked in, it will also show you areas that you've perhaps missed. Like I didn't really do too good a job of this because I was applying it relatively quickly, but just by clicking and dragging and painting over these, you can see anything that you might have missed. It really, taking the time to pay attention to these little details, I think takes images from one level to the next. Even if it's not like the greatest image in the world, you can still be a good craftsman and apply your edits with the care that your images deserve. So I like to just make sure that I'm applying the effects to the areas that I want to be applying it to. Okay, so now that we have the texture here, It's important to know that these buttons here to add and remove different effects operate the same way. If I were to click a different effect here, that effect would replace the effect I just used. It's really easy to undo it and still get back the effect that I wanted, but you need to click Add to start the next effect, which you want to apply. So at this point, I want to start to adjust the sky, and what this is going to do is really direct the viewer's eye when they're starting to look at the picture. This is something I'm very aware of when I'm editing. It's something I always try to pay attention to is what do I want my viewer to see? What do I want them to look at in this picture? And I guess then what do I want them to take away and think about with my photo? As photographers, we're in control of all of these questions, and with things like focus and light, you're able to better direct people to what you actually want them to look at. Doing things like removing distractions is one way to do that. If there's a bright area in the picture, the viewer's eye is naturally going to jump to it. So if I'd left these lights in here, for example, the eye would naturally, I think, fall on the building and then maybe run around these car trails and then hang out where these lights were and then sort of maybe bounce around between what they were looking at. With this, I think there's a real nice circular flow without these distractions, and it's just around here. But I'm kind of getting lost up in the sky. So I want to add a vignette, and what that will do is sort of darken these outside areas here to really keep the viewer's eye in and around the building. And the other thing that we'll do is darken the sky and sort of give that feel to like, oh, I wonder, what's up there, what's out there, really adding to that feel of the photo. So there are a lot of different vignette options on the left here. Big Softy is one that I'm quite a fan of. It's just a nice gradual vignette. There's subtle and center spot and other different ones like that. You can see there's lots of options. Some of these are new to Suite 8. White vignette I hadn't seen before. But I think I'm going to stick with Big Softy here. And so you can see that it's really starting to give that darkened effect around the building and lighten the sky behind it. It might be a little too heavy-handed. You can see it's sort of making the sky a little noisy. So there are a couple of things we can do to fix that. The layer opacity here is one way. We can drag this down, and the vignette sort of disappears. It gets a little darker in the corners, but it's not really what I want. Where's that opacity gone? There we go. Okay, so the other thing I'm thinking of here at this point is I like how dark these are, maybe at around this level, but I don't like what it's doing in my sky. Vignettes don't need to be applied to the whole picture. So there are a couple of things that I want to do to maybe help this out. New in Suite 8, there's this centering button here in the filter options, which lets you pick where you want the center of the vignette to be. Just by clicking, you can tell the vignette to be up over here or way over here, and it will adjust the vignette accordingly, which is pretty sweet. I want the vignette to be around here, maybe a little lower of center. So I'm going to click, and it looks like it went a little too left of where I want to be. That is starting to look good, but it's not quite what I want because it's a little too dark at the top for it. And again, this is entirely to taste and to what the photographer wants the picture to look like. Other people may think this is fine. I want to do something different where I'm really bringing people down into this building and keeping them there. Some things I like to do with vignettes and some effects are using masks actually to mask out parts of them. So I'm just going to try this, the masking bug, and dragging this around vertically here to give it almost like there's this tractor beam or something coming down here. It cuts through the vignette at the top, and you can adjust how thick the vignette gap is and how much it's feathered like that. And we can see sort of what that does. It's okay, I think. I might take my masking brush here and see what that's done. So it's masked out pretty much the middle vignette of the image, but I want to restore some of the vignette to the top. So I'm just going to paint back in. You can toggle between painting in and out by just pressing the X key. You can see the plus, minus, plus to paint in, minus to paint out as I'm pressing X. So to paint back in, I'm just going to go like this and paint across the top. And maybe that looks okay. I might need to adjust the opacity with which I'm painting. Yeah, it's left a pretty heavy line there. So I'm going to make this feathering a little higher to apply it more gradually, and something about there, and just sort of paint in and around that. Something like, needs to be a little darker. And this will bring back some of that vignette at the top. And this is just something I'm doing gradually taking this down to see where it makes sense. And then I'm going to paint that out a little bit so there's not as harsher a line. That's coming to look pretty good right about there, I think. Okay. So if I'm done with the vignette at this stage, I want to start adding some styling to the picture in terms of color. There's a photo filter section here which is similar to Suite 7. There was a graduated filters section and a solid photo filters section, and they've all been sort of merged together into this one drop down here. Magenta, which is my favorite, is still there, and I like to apply this to my night skies to give it a slightly purple hue. I don't ever apply this at 100%. I always take it down just a little bit, something like that. And I don't want the effect applied to the building either. So I'm just going to take the masking bug and drop it over the top here so it looks like that. And this is really starting to come together for me, I think. The sky's got some fun color in it. If I click and apply that mask, you can see the difference the effect makes by toggling it on and off. Oops, the mask didn't get applied. Let's make sure that happens. There we go. So I'm going to apply that to the building just by dragging it and making it the correct width and height. Plus, to say that, you can see that the mask has been applied here by this layer preview on the right. The last thing I think I want to do is maybe make this building pop a little bit and add some contrast in. The adjustment brushes from Suite 7 they're still here. They're just in, I think they were called basic brushes or something like that. They're now in adjustment brushes, and they're all here with these little brush icons, which means you can take them and brush in different parts of the picture. So they all start with a black mask, which means the effect isn't applied at all. Kind of like what we did with the tone enhancer here. It's just that state where it's ready to go. I'm going to reset my opacity sliders here in feathering. The size looks pretty good, and I'm just going to make the building a little lighter. I didn't reset perfect brush, so I need to be careful about where I paint so I don't run over. Add that on and just make sure that I get all of the building. Cool. And again, I'm just going to check here if I missed anything. These are the little bits that count for me. Some little leftover red bits here. Cool. And I'm going to add, and the last thing I want to do is show you guys the dynamic contrast filter. This is actually pretty cool the way that they've done this. There's lots of different contrast levels you can apply. You can be really heavy-handed with some stuff if you want to. This makes the stars come out a little more, which is actually pretty cool. Often when I'm editing images, I'll just sort of click through if something looks interesting like this. I have a rough idea of what I want to apply an effect to, but you know, all these different preview panes, the previews in the pane here show you some pretty fun ideas which can take your images in different directions. So I think I'm just going to stick with natural, because it's bringing out some of the darker tones in the building, and it's darkening the tree line over here on the right. So let's see what this looks like at a different level. I don't always go in at 100%. You can just drag and adjust, and that's starting to look pretty good. The last thing I'm going to do is just brush darker on the tree line to really remove some of the light on these trees. I like the left, but I want to make sure that I just darken the trees on the right here to make the building pop. Cool. So at this point, I'm pretty much done with this picture. You can see it from, this is what it came in looking like, just using Command P to toggle preview off here. And then with, what have we got, 6 different effects selectively applied, we can take the image and really make that building stand out from the background, from the stars, and give it that exact feel that I was chasing. So I'm just going to hit apply, and this actually has saved pretty quickly before. So this used to take sometimes on the order of 15 or 20 minutes, and now it's just it's so much faster. So thank you to On1 for making that better. At this point, I'm done with this picture, so I'm just gonna save and close out of here before I get into the next thing I want to show you guys. Maybe before I do, this is a good point to pause and see if there are any questions that people have. If there aren't, I'll just keep going. Michael, Liz, feel free to jump in and let me know at any time. So I'm just going to close and save out of here. So back to Aperture. The last thing that I want to show you guys is a new workflow. For me, that's going to save me tons and tons of time. This is something new to Aperture users that weren't available to us in the past. I think it was there in Lightroom, but I'm not completely sure. There's a batch process now where you can apply different operations from within the different modules in the suite to the images in an automated way. So these are some images that I took of the honky tonk bars in Nashville. These are all straight out of the camera. Just going through, I spent some time at, I think this is Broadway in downtown Nashville, just like looking at the people, looking at the music. Everyone here was having a good time. This guy's on the guitar, but they're all sort of, this is in a guitar shop, they're all relatively flat and straight out of the camera, and I want to give them that sort of Western, this Western feel. This guy was busking on the street. Here's the image that was in the presentation at the beginning. This guy was really wailing on the bass here, and he spotted me when I was walking by. And this band, so what I was looking for was basically a selection of images from Nashville that I can use to show you guys how to batch edit. So the easiest way is just to select all the images you want to edit in one go and open them with Perfect Batch. If you already have the suite open in Browse, you can use Batch from there. But I'm just going to select Batch here, and it'll do some preparation. And we get this little window which says, what do we want to do with these pictures? Where we want to save them to. Round trip means bring them back into Aperture. You can pick a different folder if you want to, or where they live currently. Round trip because I want them back into Aperture. But here's a great power, right? You can click to add any different module from within the suite. So I'm going to pick Perfect Effects. And what this lets me do is apply different presets that I've chosen. I might want to pick from some of the ones that On One has given. So if I want to apply, you'll notice that these match exactly to what was in Perfect Effects on the left in the preview pane before. So I can pick any one of these, dynamic contrast, natural if I want to, and then I can do it again and again and again. It becomes like quite actually powerful to do this in a automated way over a giant set of images. If you have a lot of images you want to apply the same effect to. I don't want to apply this effect. In this case, I have a preset which I saved previously called Nashville, which I want to apply. The other thing, which is pretty cool, is if you are someone who likes to watermark your pictures, I sometimes do, I sometimes don't. There's a whole debate about watermarking, which I'm not going to get on too much. But if you want to pick a watermark to apply, it's as simple as finding the watermark. I have a PNG file here with my watermark. And I'm not sure, this is actually kind of hard to see, but I'll make the size a little bit bigger and you can see here, drag the opacity up. This is the watermark that it's going to apply in the picture and exactly where it's going to apply it. You can adjust the inset and move it around. And this is relative to the corner of the screen or the position on the screen that you want it applied in. I usually put my watermarks on the bottom right or the bottom left, depending on where in the picture makes it look the best. Relatively close to the corner, maybe 1 or 2 pixels in, at a particular size, and never at full opacity because again, I don't want it to be a distracting element. So I usually apply it at around 50 or 60% opacity. So what this is going to let me do is apply this preset and this watermark to all of those pictures and save them back into Aperture. This is as quick as it gets, and I click OK, and it's going to go away and take some time to edit these pictures. There are 11 of them, so hopefully it shouldn't take too long. Again, if there are any questions at this point, Liz or Mike, I'd be happy to add some at this point. We're just going to hang out and wait for these to finish here. Let me look into the questions tab. Good to see some Aperture users in the crowd. Sorry for the Lightroom guys. Okay, so at this point, all my images have come back in. I'm going to make these different. Invert. I keep red as images I want to edit and green as images that have finished. But now the image has been edited and all the presets have been applied. This is something that would previously take opening and editing and saving and all the rest of it. So this is just really, really quick. This is a real big time saver for me in my workflow if I want to apply, like if I'm editing a shoot from a concert or something I've photographed. Very often what I'll do is I'll make the preset, like I might edit this picture for example and save the Nashville preset. At that point I'll take any pictures which have a similar color palette and apply that preset to all of them and just see what happens. Maybe some of them work. Like I don't think this one works too well because it's green and blue. It doesn't really look terribly good. with that preset applied, and this is the nature of the game with presets. Sometimes they don't work, right? Um, but for images with the color palette that you design the preset for, it's making total sense for me in some of these. So yeah, big time saver there.